In my last video that was on reviews in Luigi's Mansion, a commenter left a comment asking, it'd be interesting if you covered why some video games have demos and others don't. And that stuck out to me because my first thought was, well, most games do have demos. But then I started looking into it, and to my surprise, it was the complete opposite. Then I started thinking, wow, the Playable demo like died right before our eyes and nobody even noticed. Or at least I didn't notice. I looked on Steam, I looked at the Nintendo eShop, I looked at some of the biggest, most viral, successful outlier games from the past few months. Helldivers 2, Palworld, Balatro, Lethal Company, none of them have playable demos. So then I thought to myself, okay, how did this happen? I remember a time when it was totally the norm to have a demo. It was kind of an expectation. It was part of the package that there'd be a demo available. And I remember growing up, I had a friend who had official Xbox magazine, and that would have a demo disc every month. And we played so much Mad Dash Racing and Kung Fu Chaos off the demo disc. It was a great time. I'll always remember that. So I'm super surprised now, and I'm wondering who killed the Playable demo. I looked into it and I have a theory about that. But the first thing I want to talk about is this strange concept called needle time. I was obviously not there for this, but there's a whole Wikipedia page about it, so I think it's true. From the 1950s to the 1980s, the UK had a series of laws called needle time, which put a strict cap, hard limit on how much music the BBC could play over the radio per day. And this was lobbied for by the Musicians Union and by the major record labels, because the theory was nobody's gonna wanna buy vinyl records if they could just flip on the radio and hear all this music for free, or at least enough of the music that they wouldn't want to go out and buy anything. I think that's very knee-jerk. On the one hand, if you're a musician or you're a record label, you obviously want people to buy your stuff. You obviously want to protect your product and what you created. But I don't think that's the best way to go about it, and I'll get into that a little bit more a little bit later. But what stands out as interesting to me about that is they didn't totally try to ban playing music over the radio. They just set a strict upper limit. And I think that speaks to the balance that anyone who's marketing anything always needs to try to strike. If you give too much of a preview or you give too much away, obviously nobody will buy it. But on the other extreme, if no one's ever heard of what you're selling and you're not on anyone's radars, then it's impossible for them to buy what you're selling for the other reason, because no one's ever heard of you. So let's get back to what happened to demos. Pretend for a second that you're an indie game developer. You want to develop a game and you want to sell that game. The first thing you need to do is make a game that people want to play, so you might have to look at other games and see why they're successful, pick a target audience and say, well, what do they like and why? Do a bunch of upfront work to make it more likely that the thing you end up developing is something people would want to play to begin with. Then once you've made your game, or at least you've made enough of the game that it's time to get the word out, that's when you start doing the sort of mind control ad tactics that you probably think of when I say the word marketing. But I think marketing's sort of a legacy term, and the way I think of it now is building hype. You want to build hype, generate interest, however you can, with the ultimate goal of getting pre-orders or as many people to buy the game as possible once it comes out. How would you do that? In the past, there were print ads, there were TV ads.
All you had to do was ask Super Mario Bros. 3 from Nintendo. Now you're playing with power.
If you had a huge budget, you could even have a Saturday morning cartoon.
But I can't. I'm gonna have a baby.
There were trailers, and then, once the technology advanced, then came the Playable demo. That's perfect. Cut out the middleman, give people a bite-sized portion of the experience to get them interested and hyped on your game, rope them in just enough so that they have no choice but to buy the whole thing. And there are huge demo success stories. The original Doom, I think, is the most famous example. They let people play level 1 for free and then said, hey, if you enjoyed that and you want more levels, you're gonna have to send us money, and most people seem to. Some demos are mission-based, other demos are time-based. The way you'd get demos changed. First you'd send them in the mail, then you'd get them in a magazine, or you'd have to go to Pizza Hut. Then they came bundled with other games or as promo discs sent out by the publisher. And until finally they just became direct downloads. But whether it's a download or through a magazine, the principle's the same. Let people play a little bit and then they buy the game when it comes out or if it already is out. And again, I remember a time growing up where any major release, you could reasonably expect to be able to play a demo somehow. So what happened to that? I thought that the death of the demo was greatly exaggerated. The first thing I did was open up the Nintendo eShop, and here in the featured section, you'll notice that they're trying to get you to pre-order games that they just showed in the June Direct, but then here's a section for demos, so okay, let's click into that. Some games I don't know about, definitely some real mainline Nintendo franchise. You got Peach, Kirby, Yoshi. Again, these are true mainline Nintendo franchise, but I don't see Mario or Zelda or any of the true titans in here. Nintendo gives you something, but they're not gonna let you play something like Mario or Zelda for free. So that's in the featured section. Next thing I did was I went to the top 10, and I had to scroll all the way down to number 16 for this game I literally had never heard of called Boomerang before I could find anything that had a demo. This is a small sample size, but it definitely seems like demo's the exception rather than the norm, and almost all the current top sellers, none of them have a demo. So that's the eShop. The next thing I did was check Steam. Steam does have a demo section right here, placed pretty prominently on their page. So that's nice to see. But I'm clicking through these games and I don't recognize most of these. And more than I don't recognize them, I don't really want to play them. There's some things here. I see Deltarune, I see Tekken, I see Civilization. Definitely some big name titles. But again, there's a lot I'm not seeing, and for all this stuff I've never heard of, I don't think the fact that there's a demo is gonna get me to try it. That's all I needed to see. After looking at that, I definitely believe now that demos are withering away. But again, how did that happen? And how did that happen right under our nose? So to answer that question, I just thought to myself, imagine I was an indie game dev. How would I build hype today? There's a lot of things I could do. I could make a dev diary series on YouTube. I could lean on more social media platforms like think Twitter, Instagram, Reddit. I could start building a Discord community. I could work with a popular streamer or YouTuber and set up a sponsored stream of my game. I could even go to an indie game showcase or just a gaming convention. And I could also make a playable demo. So there's clearly a lot that I could do, all with the goal of building hype. So how do I pick from all those options? If I have a lot of options to pick from, I try to pick the most efficient way that I can do the least effort for the most payoff, or that gets me the closest to my goal. I think that was kind of the nail in the demo's coffin. I think it's just too much work. Masahiro Sakurai, who created the Kirby and the Super Smash Bros. Series, has a YouTube channel that's all about making games. And I'm not gonna play the video here because I don't want to displease Sakurai, but he has a video on demos, and the bottom line is, making a demo is a lot of work. If you're gonna make a demo, it's not as simple as just cutting off a section of the full game and sending it out. There's a bunch of things to consider, which Sakurai goes through in his video, and it amounts to basically having a second version of the game that you have to develop in tandem. Look, I've obviously never developed a game, but Sakurai's been doing it since the NES days. If he says making a demo is a lot of work, I'm inclined to believe him. And I think that's the issue. I think the media landscape changed. There's so many ways to use the internet to get the word out and put your game in front of people that are frankly a lot less effort, that you don't need to go through the trouble of making a demo to spread awareness for your game. I think the second thing that sort of killed the idea of a demo is the fact that Steam's refund policy is what it is. If you buy any game on Steam, if you bought the game less than 14 days ago, and within those 14 days you've played 2 hours or less of the game, you can submit for an auto refund to Steam, and Valve will grant that, no questions asked. Even if you do go over one of those two limits, Valve welcomes you to submit for a refund, and they'll look at it on a case-by-case basis. If you can give any game back as long as you haven't played it for 2 hours or more, that basically makes every game a demo, and you don't have to do any extra work as a developer. Nintendo and Sony's online stores are a little bit more hardcore. I saw some people have some success trying to trade in for refunds, but their policy pretty much is if you buy it, you're stuck with it. I think Steam is so big and most games are on it that, again, if I was an indie dev, I don't really know how much time I'd spend making a demo if I knew that in practical terms, anything I put on Steam is gonna basically have a demo version just by nature of Valve's refund policy. So apart from the media landscape changing, the gaming landscape has also changed too since the 90s and 2000s. And by that I mean, there are a lot of free-to-play options today. I was thinking of games that were free to play from when I was growing up, and I couldn't think of very many. You had RuneScape and MapleStory. League of Legends came out at some point in the late 2000s, and TF2 went free to play in the early 2010s, but true full-featured free-to-play games were very few and far between back then. If you wanted to play almost any game, you had to pay for it. Now that's not the case. It is very much the norm to have free-to-play games that are funded and supported by microtransactions, and so if you're looking to try things for free, you don't have to rely on demos anymore. Some of the biggest, most fully featured games today come out free to play, and if you're really on a budget or looking for things to play for free, there are many options today that don't involve you playing a watered-down demo version of something. The very last thing I'll mention, which is something that came up while I was looking through it, is the idea of lost sales. So I don't really agree with this, but some people have the theory that the reason game companies stopped making playable demos is because there was a concern that providing a demo would eat into the sales when it came out. What I just want to say about that is I think that's wrong. I think that's backward. I think that's literally just needle time mentality playing out again. However, there could be some truth to it. Just because I think lost sales is a farce doesn't mean Nintendo or some other video game company thinks that. Even if it's right or wrong, somebody might think it. So it's true that there are publishers out there who could be factoring that into whether they make a demo or not. Also, just because I think it's wrong, obviously remember, I've never done true research into this, and a lot of these big publishers probably have. I would imagine if they looked into it, they'd find that instead of making a demo, it would make more sense to do free to play or just discount the game later on. But like I said, it seems wrong to me, but I don't really know. And then I think as the demo went away, when something goes away, especially when it's gradual and chips away over time, it just stops being an expectation of the consumer. Think about it. When was the last time you even played a demo? If you have played a demo, when was the last time you were on the fence about something and you played a demo and that made you get the game? That hasn't happened for me probably since the GameCube and Xbox. It's been a really, really long time. Or think of the inverse. When was the last time you were somewhat interested in a game, went to go look up a playable demo, saw that there wasn't one offered, and then lost interest in the game? That's never happened to me. It just hasn't. Definitely let me know down in the comments if it has for you. I think like many other things, the internet changed the cost-benefit calculation for getting the word out. If you're gonna make a demo, you know for a fact it's gonna be a lot of effort, and how much reward you get for that effort, it's kind of questionable. There's a lot of ways it could go. You could be the next id Software and have your demo work as intended and build hype, or the demo's subpar and it makes people lose interest in the game, or you spend all your time making a demo and you release it, but didn't sufficiently market the game in other ways, so you just send it out into a sea of other demos and no one really plays it. The goal really is to get pre-orders, and I kind of see the demo as the total opposite of a pre-order. A pre-order means you've built so much hype that somebody's willing to pay you for something that doesn't exist yet. The demo is a player not paying you for something that does exist. It's just to say, you know for sure it's gonna be a lot of work coming in. It's sort of a question mark if that work is gonna have a payoff. And it might just be better to make a Discord community. And I think that's why you see things that are based around the full game. Things like open betas or free weekends or server stress tests, or like I said before, a sponsored stream with like a known YouTuber or a streamer. That way you know you're getting the eyeballs and you don't have to make anything separate to do it. Anyway, what do you think? Does this seem right to you, or did I get it all wrong? What were some of your favorite demos? What was your Mad Dash Racing or Kung Fu Chaos when you were growing up? I guess after looking into all this, I'm less surprised that demos went away and more surprised that it happened completely under my nose. I guess it goes to show that when something goes away gradually enough, it's very hard to discern any change in the moment, and it makes me wonder what's going away next. Thanks so much for watching. Talk to you soon.